Hi again. I'm Kern Trembath, owner and founder of Helio Roast Coffee of San Francisco, California. We roast on Treasure Island in the middle of the San Francisco-Oakland Bay and really hope that these videos are helpful ways to encourage you to find, make, and especially enjoy your own coffee preferences. This video will show you what we think is the best way to make brewed coffee. In previous ones, we've looked at both espresso and Turkish coffee, which, as you'll recall, refer more to processes than they do to cultivars. Even though each of them start with the same beans, they end up producing very different results. Each an outstanding way to enjoy coffee, each an outstanding way to move flavors from bean to mouth. But brewing is the most common way to make coffee, though, and so I think it pays dividends to pay very careful attention to how to do it well. The best brewer, we think, is the siphon or vacuum process one. You can use it with beans roasted all the way from City, which is extremely light, to French, which is extremely dark. What the siphon or vacuum process produces, we believe, is the highest possible extraction from beans that are ground for regular brewing, which is what most of us do at home. Extraction is the best measure of how efficiently and completely you are transferring tastes from bean to mouth. And it's not expensive. As we'll see later on, you can very easily brew excellent coffees with very reasonably priced hardware. There are three components to modern siphon brewers. A lower chamber, which looks basically like a regular coffee pot that you might see in a restaurant. An upper chamber with a neck or a nose extending into the lower one, and a stopper. The stopper is a small but absolutely crucial part of the process. It acts as sort of a directional policeman, making sure that the water stays where it's supposed to and the coffee grounds stay where they're supposed to until you want them to merge. And then it makes sure that the water, which is now coffee, goes where it's supposed to, but the grounds don't follow, so that you have a rich, smooth, and full-bodied cup of your favorite coffee. So, the architecture of the siphon process is that the bottom chamber is filled with the right amount of water. The upper chamber is filled with the right amount of coffee grounds, and the stopper is seated inside the neck or the nose to direct traffic. Using the standard 1:15 brewing ratio, and of course your mileage may vary, pour the right amount of water into the upper chamber, place it on top of the lower chamber with the nose extending into the lower chamber, and then place the stopper into the top of the nose. Then pour the right amount of coffee grounds into the upper chamber and place all of it on your heat source. In general, the siphon process makes use of what we all learned at high school physics. As bodies are heated, they expand in volume. So once the three parts of the hardware are sitting on your heat source, fire it up. As the water heats up below, it expands, and the only place it can expand to is up the nose. So it's forced up that nose or neck into the upper chamber where it encounters the dry coffee grounds and begins to saturate them. When the water has stopped being forced up the nose, turn the heat down but not off, just high enough to keep the surface of the remaining water in that lower chamber gently rolling. And don't be surprised if there's still water in that lower chamber. That retains pressure in the lower chamber and thereby makes sure that the coffee in the upper chamber stays there. And of course, it also prevents the bottom chamber from cracking under direct heat. At this point, you'll want to give the top chamber, the slurry in the top chamber, a good stir. Be sure not to use anything metal. I found out that a wooden or a plastic chopstick is excellent here. For reasons that we've covered in our Turkish coffee video, you'll want to keep agitating that slurry so that they extract evenly. Give it about 5 minutes to saturate and stir it every minute or so. And then when 5 minutes have gone by, remove the entire set from the range or burner and set it on a counter. Once this happens, the now extracted coffee will move from higher pressure to lower, once again, high school physics, and be sucked down to the bottom. The stopper ensures that almost zero grounds go along with it. The coffee will have plenty of body, but you won't be chewing any of it. Now here's the fun part, and I've discovered that both adults and kids love to watch it. It turns out that there will still be less pressure in the lower chamber than the upper one, even when all the liquid coffee up top has descended. The only way that the two pressures can become fully equalized is for the lower chamber to suck air down the nose, since there's no more liquid upstairs. And when this happens, it'll look like you have carbonated coffee down there. You'll see and hear a lot of gurgling and bubbling until the pressure is equalized between the two chambers. The physics of what's going on is a minor league version of the espresso process. Pressure is applied to hot water surrounding coffee grounds so that a higher concentration of the flavors inside those grounds is extracted from them. Obviously, it's a lot less pressure than the 9 bars that are standard in most espresso makers, but still, it's a lot more than the simple force of gravity that makes water drip through a paper filter. And so, more flavors end up in your cup. One of the ways you can tell this, obviously in addition to tasting it, is that the expended grounds up top will be significantly drier at the end of this process than what's left over in the brewing processes that use gravity and paper filters. The moisture that isn't there is in your cup instead, and it is packed with flavors. A quick word about how this process was invented. Until the 19th century, coffee in Western cultures and countries was made primarily by boiling coffee grounds in water. In general, the taste of this coffee was on a scale from terrible to putrid. And if you were really, really lucky, it was only awful. It was bitter when it was first made, and then quickly turned to sour as you continued to boil it, and especially then once it started to cool down in your cup. But if you didn't have any alternatives, you don't know what you don't know. The earliest siphon patent was granted in 1838 to Madame Jean Richard, who used hardware that was manufactured but not patented by scientists in Berlin. 2 years later, in 1840, the first commercial siphon brewer was designed and patented by another French woman, Madame Marie Fanny Almaine Masson of Lyon, France, better known as Madame Vassier because that's the name she used in her patent. Now note in this picture the non-functional decorative crown at the top. This tells us that the production of coffee has left the private kitchen and is intended instead to be seen and used in public, whether in a dining room or a restaurant. By the way, if you look online for the history of the siphon method, you'll find these two women prominently mentioned. If you look at Wikipedia, there's no mention of either. You can do with that fact what you want, but here's a good non-Wikipedia source to read. Okay, a quick word about cost. You can get these excellent results with very little investment. If you look at Amazon for cost comparison purposes, for instance, you'll see that siphon brewers from Bodum, Klarstein, or Yama cost under $100, sometimes well under $100. Most siphon makers you see online have a cloth filter that functions as the stopper instead of the glass one. Rather than using the cloth ones that come with the hardware, look online for one of these two brands. Well, here's to the best coffee that physics can brew. Enjoy.